CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, thank you for tuning in, everyone. We're here with Cody Creager, and he's with Timber Products Company, and I was really lucky to get a chance to meet Cody in person at the somewhat recent Reliable Plant Conference. For 2024, that was out in Chicago. It's actually Schaumburg. And Cody put on a presentation that I'm so glad I got a chance to sit in on. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and more so the topic that he covered and why it's really important. And that's going to get into asset hierarchy. And he's been there, he's done that. I talk about people that are real practitioners. They've been in the trenches, boots on the ground. This man is that. Cody, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. Awfully excited to be here and get a chance to talk with you about some maintenance stuff for a little while.
And that, that's really what it's all about. So the thing I was excited about when you did that presentation at Reliable Plant was not only did it make sense, but I was starting to then understand, aside from what I may or may not have already known, how that creates value within your organization and how maintenance teams really move when it comes to more of a maintenance and reliability perspective, but it ties very closely to, if not exactly to, the CMMS, because that's where you build these asset hierarchies. So I want to hit you right out of the gate with, when it comes to asset hierarchies, why, in your view, is that so important, and what does it really do for the entire team and organization when they're leveraging their CMMS that way?
Well, part off in some of your question there, the organization part of it, that just helps tremendously. But I think it's a great, your building blocks or your foundation, your CMMS system, to have your asset hierarchy built. Mine's still not built, still working on it. But having that information in there gives your team a better understanding of what needs to be worked on, what part of the plan it is. It gives you a good roadmap for your team to build off of and go out there and fix the assets that are needed.
And is there, so when you yourself, when you started exploring this and looking at or identifying, hey, we need an asset hierarchy, we don't have that right now. How did you learn that? And then how did you attack it? And I know you're still working on it because this is something that you start and it can tend to be ongoing depending on what you really have. But can you give us some background on how you learned about that in the first place, and then how you started to attack it initially?
Yeah. So when I first started getting into CMMS, I just find it intriguing. I kind of like it. I think it works for me. I feel like I understand it pretty good. And so when I started getting into asset hierarchy, I started looking up the ISO 14224. And I like the way it's all laid out, and it explains everything to you. But also, I kind of changed it up a little bit to where it worked for me and my team and our plant that we're in now. So not everything exactly is to ISO 14224, but it's built off of that. And I think it's got some really good information in there.
Do you now when you deviate from that, is that something like in your view, like if somebody's struggling with that themselves, do you think people get too hung up on being perfect about meeting those standards and they're just afraid to get close or kind of deviate from it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think maybe so, because I feel like I struggle with that a little bit too, working on it, trying to get it to be perfect. I wouldn't worry about necessarily if it's perfect to that standard. I would make sure it's perfect for what you need in your plant. So some of my stuff is really broken down and follows it to a T. Some of it isn't broken down as far because it just doesn't need to be broken down as far as some of the more important assets that we have.
Do you think it would be typical of a maintenance superintendent like you are, or supervisor, or someone in that role? Do they kind of already know that, but then if they focus on those standards, they kind of lose sight of it because those standards are kind of rigorous?
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know if necessarily lose sight of it. For me, it maybe brought it into context for me a little bit, to where I knew that I didn't want it exactly like that, but I could just, I knew where it needed to be and I could kind of build it to what I wanted.
So when it comes to the asset hierarchy, so I've thought about this a lot, knowing that we were going to have this episode, but also even when you made the presentation and some of the other people that we know in common that I was talking to, think Joe Anderson, think Brian Bieski, uh, Matthew Knuth, on and on like this, right? Howard Penrose. When we're talking about the CMMS itself and how it's laid out, one of the things I've always kind of looked at is I want to know first, where is it? Like, where is my facility, the location, the plant, the buildings, and the grounds? Then I want to know, how is that further broken down? Then I want to know where within those locations are these assets located? And then I want to know, how are these assets comprised or configured? Meaning, is this asset a series of assets like parent child? And that's how I've always tended to look at it. It's what I look for. Is that at all similar to how the asset hierarchy works in what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I have my plant and my buildings broken down, and then I have my departments inside my buildings, and then from the departments is where I have my equipment, and then I break down the equipment further into that point and get into the nuts and bolts of all of it then.
So the as an organization, the department owns the asset, so to speak,
Yeah.
as far as how you view it in the platform, and then
Yeah, because I follow the departments where they're at in the process of what we're building here at the site. So we have our layup department and our dryer department, and so everything that's you know in those departments is how I categorize it underneath of it, and then break them down into their subcomponents.
yes, that's great. I know in the years in the past where I was working with people to structure their deployments, I'm using that loosely. Like, we would have a process that we follow. We could move in different directions and gap fill here and gap fill there. But I think as you start to lay that out, you start to notice, at least this was my experience, how you can capture not just the data on when an asset is failing or when an asset had some corrective response, which would relate to a failure or maybe failure mode, but you also start to put meaningful data into what a lot of CMMS systems do with reports, where it's not just about the work order, but the work order is being done at a place to a thing, and then what was done to that thing, how much time was spent, why did it happen, what was the result afterwards, how much did it cost. And this is the roll-up data that starts to connect the maintenance department, the maintenance activities, to the overall business. And I'm just curious how it was working with your team when you're starting to work on this, because you probably have to leverage a couple of people, one or two people anyway, to help gather the data around that. How'd you solve for that part of it, like getting your hands on the data that helps you build the hierarchy?
So it was very slow at the beginning. I actually went out and built the first one the way I thought that it needed to be built. I worked through it with some of my team, mostly my millwrights, some electricians. Went over it with my manager, and then from there built that, got it into our CMMS system, and from then on I had kind of a layout for my guys, and so I would send a millwright out first, say, hey, I want this machine center broke down into a hierarchy, and then we can get it in our system so we can attach all of our spare parts and everything, and we know how much time we're working on this equipment. So first off, a millwright would take it out there, they'd go fill it out as best as they could. I'd go over it and see if there's any changes, or we talk about any changes, figure out why something should be in there or why something shouldn't be in there, because there is some of that give and take, on your consumables, or what are your actual parts of your inventory, or are they components of it. So there was definitely some conversations in there. And then I turned it over to an electrician, had them run through and do the same thing so we can get our electrical stuff put in there. And then we inputted it into our system. Worked with my maintenance planner and our CMMS representative to get it in there the way we wanted it, tailored it to our needs.
That and what I'm hearing here and what I was kind of shooting for, so like to get this story, is what's really important for your CMMS success is your maintenance team's way of kind of being, moving, their workflows, and they have to be bought in and understand why the heck are we even doing this in the first place type
Absolutely.
of a deal. And
Yep.
it sounds like you had that. And then what happens, the real reason that's so important, like in my view, is that when someone's using the system, they now already understand how it's connected to what they would have done without the system in the first place. Does that kind of jive with what what you did, how you approached it?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say too, right off the bat, I probably didn't have as much buy-in until I was able to show them the work that we were doing and how it all correlated together and what kind of benefit we were getting from it. So right off the bat, it wasn't 100% buy-in, but having some of the guys work on that stuff, and that's kind of why I brought them in too, to get them to learn this stuff and have some accountability for it and get that buy-in. So I think it's been good to have them help me building them.
I agree. Team involvement. We talked about it at Reliable Plant, where a lot of the things that people are talking about is how you can get that full team participation rather than the kind of old school, well, I told you to do it, go do it. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think another one we were talking a lot about was we've always done it that way. And it's like, that's the problem. Like sometimes that kind of holds water, but
yeah, and not even just an asset hierarchy at CMMS. I feel like I've been having that conversation more lately of, well, just because it's the way you've always done it doesn't mean it's right. We need to figure out why, drill down to that root cause, figure it out.
That's good too. Cause there's this thing with digitization or partial digitization. Personally, yeah, I think a lot of companies go into this thinking, I've got to set everything up, I've got to get everything right, and then I can use it. Now there are scenarios where that's true.
Yeah.
However, doing some things or certain things can have an impact, help you develop further buy-in, right? Like at first you might get some resistance, now they're participating, and now you can show them, look guys and gals, look what we built and look what this is doing for us, and they can have their aha moment. Even if they don't like it, they'll be like, now I see why. At least that way I can keep participating. So
we've had a lot of those conversations too in this maintenance department. They're not quite seeing the benefit yet or where we're at or where we're going. And so we have those conversations, and it's not everybody's totally bought in all the time or 100% yet. But I think I was telling you at the conference, I would say in our journey here at Timber Products, our CMMS system is fairly new. So we're all getting into it right now. And so it is nice to see some of that buy-in when it does happen, or those aha moments like you were just saying.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, aside from what a CMMS can really do when you can start showing leadership or people on the maintenance team, where it's really driving value. It's helping people do all this kind of stuff. But those aha moments, they're somehow really, really satisfying, because you're not going back to those people going, I told you so. You're actually like, yeah, they get it now. It's cool. I mean, like it's like I don't know, like a happy moment. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think you get the point, right?
Yeah.
What do you think makes the difference when somebody is now turning the corner and really buying in? Is it seeing the product of the work they did and they had, like the faith in you that it's going to be meaningful to the business, or is it something else?
I mean, the turning point on that, I think that that's when they start enjoying some of the stuff that they're working on, as far as in the CMMS system, the platform that we have. Yeah, I think overall it's more of for them. I like seeing it, but I think when we have those inventory pieces put in there and they're attached to the asset, we can go in and we find out where they're at, and man, it just saves time for the guys. And that's something else we're working on, is the storeroom management part of it. But them being able to navigate the system or learning or understanding what we've been doing and what we're working on, I think it helps them. They're starting to realize that it can be a very beneficial tool for them.
Yeah. One thing I was curious about is, were any of your team members like right away telling you or saying anything that suggested they thought it was to babysit them, that the system was there to babysit them?
Oh, I no, not really that one. And I would say the system got implemented right before I got here. So I'm not saying that maybe they had those conversations. It was, most of it is the benefit. What are we doing and where are we going? What is the benefit of this? And I would say that, like I told you earlier, we're getting there with some of those aha moments or building some of that stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I for sure. This is why I'm so passionate about the space, and I try to focus in on the maintenance management in the middle, because the software is great, but it's the people, it's the process, how they're buying in, how your whole team is really kind of moving together. You can rely on one another. You can ask questions without worrying that somebody's going to flip out, or
Yep.
if they do, they know they're in a place where, hey, we're cool if you flip out for a second, as long as you don't go completely off the rails. It gives us opportunities to kind of, let's talk about this again. Do you, this, I don't think I've ever asked anybody this question. Have you, since you started this project and had some buy-in and you're seeing some of those aha moments, have you had any turnover where it creates a gap, or have you been lucky enough that you haven't had that and that's going to stay? You know, as far as people that are really using it, have you had to train anybody new lately?
So we haven't had a lot of turnover, and I've been pretty fortunate with that. We've had a couple guys got hired right after I started. Been a great benefit to the team. We got a couple new guys right now. So total, we have about 28 millwrights and electricians on the team here, and most of them have been here for a long time. And so there are definitely some of the generational issues or differences where some guys just don't want to get on it at all, and they have some apprentices or the younger guys get on there. But no, I would say as far as training wise, we're doing pretty good on it. We definitely need more of it. And then one of our millwrights actually, he took a job as a maintenance planner at one of our other facilities close by. So he likes the stuff. He thinks it's pretty cool, and he went for it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it happens. I think we've all heard stories, but this is more about like your story and what you're seeing. And you were talking about how, I'm assuming maybe some of the older guys or gals would say, okay, apprentice, go log that in, and this is what I did, and they're over there typing. And what I like about that is they're getting exposure to someone that's been in the environment possibly longer, dealt with these things without these extra tools. They may understand the concept of digitization, but they are very accustomed to just getting the work done, and they can kind of see it, but that gets passed on through that. The apprentice gets that exposure to their knowledge, because the next thing I was going to ask you about is this thing we're all so worried about and talking about all the time, that people are going to retire and move on and will no longer have what's available in their experiences. So is that something you guys are worried about? And is that one of the reasons the CMMS is so important that they use?
I'm glad you asked that, because actually in my presentation, I talked about that a little bit. Tribal knowledge is great until you don't have it anymore. And I think there is going to be some tribal knowledge that you do lose that maybe you can't capture in CMMS. Maybe a little bit of that gray area where somebody just knows something, but you can't really put it in there. But the CMMS and asset hierarchy and all of our job plans, you get that stuff in your CMMS system, and you have that tribal knowledge as long as you're using that system. So
that knowledge, it's yours, but relative to the business unit, the machines themselves, how you can respond to them, that is very advantageous to have documented in some way, shape, or form with, completion notes on corrective responses, or even on PMs that are more than done. Actually, what did you do? What torque setting did you use? What did you find? So that's good stuff. Do you leverage the system for lockout tagout procedure as well?
We do a little bit. We do more of a pre-job checklist, And so it hits, all the safety stuff, lockout, tag out, appropriate PPE, your face shields or your SDSs. It hits all of that safety stuff. And so we also in our CMMS system have audits for our lockout, tag out, going through and auditing these machine centers that we have. So yeah, we use it quite a bit for some of that safety lockout, tag out stuff.
Plus, that covers you on the backside if something ever comes up, whether that's actually happening and being done, which is why, over the years, a lot of people would say, well, why are we putting that in the system? And I would say, well, the advantage is that you're documenting it in case something happens, not to get people in trouble, but the exact opposite, so that we know what happened. Because in safety, this was another common theme at Reliable Plant when we were out there in Schaumburg too, where people were talking about technology and documentation being something that can feed and further develop your safety protocols within an organization's plant, right? Because most typically a reliable plant is going to be a safe plant. A safe plant is likely going to be more reliable. So I wanted to ask about that kind of as a best practice that people should be considering with their CMMS, to put in this documentation that this actually was done, not to get people in trouble, but to give you that story of what happened. What if something happens and we go look at that chain of events and we could say, oh, right here, that's how that happened. Oh, who's in trouble? Well, it doesn't matter. How are we going to prevent it in the future?
Exactly. No, and I think that it's all kind of up to your facility, where you're at, how much stuff that you really want in there. I think the way we're doing it here is very beneficial to have that safety stuff in there. We have some environmental stuff in there, and we have some risk mitigation stuff in there, our fire prevention stuff. I would say our system isn't bombarded or overloaded with that stuff, but we've definitely got the really big key things that we need to pay attention to biannually or annually. We still have our safety platform that we use that's got all this stuff in it, all the different trainings and whatnot. But as far as our CMMS, we have those big ticket items that we track and pay attention to every year.
I think, again, another thing to do, and I'm not telling everybody out there, hey, go do everything and all the stuff. Look for what's going to drive value. But a couple other things. One, when it comes to what you're describing and how you work, are you also using the system for facilities as well as the maintenance of the machines and the production equipment? Are you also using it for the facility envelope, the building envelopes?
Not as much as I would like to yet, but it is something that I've started building into it while I'm doing the hierarchy. And that's me trying to build out the hierarchy as best I can. When I'm putting in some work orders and stuff here and there, there are some buildings that I attach them to because it isn't necessarily working on the equipment that's in them. It might be the infrastructure of the building that we're working on. So not as much as I'd like to yet, but I definitely am going down that path.
Yeah, and this is the reason I asked it, was this exact reason, where some organizations out there are going to leverage their CMMS primarily for their maintenance and reliability best practices as it relates to, throughput, all that, right? And others are going to focus first on their facility. It just depends case by case. So it's nice to know that you're going to leverage it for both and that takes time. People should be okay with that takes time. This idea that things are going to get set up in 2 weeks and you're going to be all good to go, that's not so common.
It is not.
Takes a while.
As much as it would be awesome if it was all in the system, man, it would make things heck of a lot nicer. But it does. It takes a lot of time, and it takes some effort to get that stuff in there and get it done. Somebody that can, put their head down and stick with it for a little while. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, and some of it can be ever evolving. You got to make sure that you have your CMMS, your owner of your system in there, updating and upgrading, and taking out equipment or adding in new equipment to that system. So you can get to a point where you have it pretty much dialed in, but it's ever evolving on that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not you're not going to get to that point where, oh, I never have to do this again. You're going to have to keep an eye on it and be involved. Well, I want to switch you to the fun questions segment.
All right.
This is for everybody that's on CMMS Radio for the first time, just to have a little bit of fun. There's no wrong answers here, man. These are just, I don't know if they're softballs. Maybe they are, but just some fun.
I'll take them.
All right, cool. First one. What is your favorite music?
Oh, man. I would say I like a little bit of everything, but there are some things that I just don't like. But, I like some country. I like some rap and hip hop. I'm really big into listening to Mass Wolf Radio right now.
Okay. That works. Second fun question. What is your favorite sport or hobby? And if it's a sport, it doesn't have to be one that you play. Maybe it's one you like to watch and root for.
All right. Oh, I would say probably baseball right now. I enjoyed playing baseball in high school a lot, and baseball and softball. My 8-year-old daughter is playing softball. I love going out and watching her play. And then my 10-year-old son, he's big into baseball, and I help coach his team. So it's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that's cool stuff, man. There ain't nothing wrong with baseball. And right now, considering the day that we're recording, we now know who's going to the World Series. It's going to be Dodgers versus Yankees. Do you have a horse in that race, or you just want to see a great battle?
I just want to see a great battle. Yeah, there's not, I live in Southern Oregon, and about the only team that I really root for is the Ducks when I actually watch them play. Everybody else, if I'm able to watch a game, I just want to watch a good game.
Cool. Yeah. No, I do the same thing mostly.
Yeah.
I am in Southern California, so they're all pressing me to root for the Blue. But
I bet.
Yeah. Final question. This is the big one. What is your perspective, philosophy, approach, opinion, anything at all on the concept of work-life balance?
Man, find something you love to do, or at least enjoy to do. I love spending time with my family, but I do know that I go to work every day to support my family and make a life for us. So when that phone rings and if something's broke or if I need to go in, I come in and make sure to get the job done. Every moment that I have that I can spend time with my family, though, I'm there to do that. I don't miss games. I'm home every night helping with homework and whatnot. So yeah, find something you enjoyed, or if you do get that phone call, it's not a killer for you. Find somebody, a partner that is understands what you're trying to do too. So that work-life balance really helps a lot when you and your partner are on the same page.
Awesome. This is why I say there's no wrong answers, because it's an individual experience. It might resonate with someone, and even if it doesn't, it's cool getting to know you, because it's not just a maintenance thing, it's a life thing. We're all human beings. So yeah. I appreciate that.
No,
for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, I thought it'd be a good idea for them to reach out on LinkedIn, and that would be Cody Creager. So it's Cody, Cody, and it's Creager, Creager. Cody, this was a blast, man. Thanks for joining me on CMMS Radio, man.
I appreciate it a lot. I've been really looking forward to this. So,
me too, man. I appreciate you. Get up to 30% off to attend the Reliable Plant and Machinery Lubrication Conference and Exhibit happening June 2nd through 5th, 2025 in Chicago, Illinois. Visit conference.reliableplant.com for the current 25% off offer and add code CMMS5 to kick that up to 30% for a limited time. Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.